Welcome. I'm here with Ina Catrinescu, and she's an expert in breakthroughs. She's been a change leader at big organizations like ING, KPMG, leading big transformations globally with 200,000 people. But she now shifted her focus to how you can get more done with less effort. And I find it's very interesting to talk to her because she has, I think, breakthrough thoughts on how you can tap into your intuition. And when we talk about passion, I think that's where you have to use your intuition, because that's where passion comes from. So I'm very happy that you're here, Ina.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with maybe the first question that I have. Why are people so busy nowadays?
Right. Well, you know, in the 1930s, economists have already predicted that our parents would work about not more than 3 hours a day. And they showed that it will not only impact our economy in a positive way, but that it would also help us thrive as a society. And that is pertinent today even more than it was back then. Because technology and economy has helped us become so much more productive than we've ever been. Since the 1960s, in the Netherlands alone, we have produced more per capita. We've increased production by 97% per capita. So we're doing more. But have we adapted our working standards? Have we adapted our working times? No, that hasn't shifted since about the 18th century. And the question is why? Why is that? And I believe that it has a lot to do with mindset, because time is money. That's something we've been going by for a very long time. Since we've introduced the clock into the synchronization of labor in the 1960s, we have turned time, in fact, into an economical currency. And by that, we have made it vulnerable to scarcity. At the same time, we also believe or equate being busy with productivity. So, for example, many of my colleagues, or I've observed even myself sometimes, we wait at the office even though we may be finished with what we were doing for the day, but we wait at the office until the boss has left the building. Why? We're trying to give a kind of an impression of being busy, being productive. So that in a way kind of conflates long working hours with heroism. So you're a hero. The longer you work, the more hours you invest, the more of a hero you are. I remember this very specific incident when my father died, and it was 5 a.m. in the morning when I had learned about the news. Well, my father was at that time 3,000 kilometers away, so for me to get there would have meant buying a ticket and so forth. So what did I do? After crying for 2 hours at 7 a.m., I went to the office as I would do any other day. When I gave the news to my boss at the time, he said, "Well, sorry for you, Ina, I'm so sorry to hear that. Why don't you just dive into work and focus on, working hard, then you'll get your mind off of the situation." But this is not to point or to judge that particular boss. He was a wonderful man. However, it shows a lot about how we are as a culture. What do we think in terms of being busy? How do we perceive being busy? And that for us, it's a bit of a heroic thing.
I got it. What's the consequence of being so busy for everyone who's out there working hard, many hours, never taking rest? What's the consequence of that?
Technology and media right now shower us with enough information that is actually sufficient to overload a computer within 1 week. Can you imagine what that does to our brain? Well, that has very clear and specific consequences on both mind, body, and our spirit. Specifically, I can mention, for example, the fact that our brains have been shrinking for the past 10,000 years. We constantly we think, the more I learn, the more information I get, the bigger my brain becomes. But that is opposite, completely not true. So what has happened? About an apple size of our brain has been removed from. So our brain has been reduced by about an apple size. If we were shrinking our bodies at the same speed, we would be standing no taller than 1.5 meters,
Wow.
or weighing no heavier than 30 kilograms.
Wow.
Can you imagine? And that's what's happening currently to our brains. Why is that? It's because our brains are the biggest energy consumption, or biggest source of energy consumption in our body.
Yeah.
It consumes a fifth of our total body energy. So when we're forced to metabolically adapt to this kind of the changes in our economy, the changes in the technology, that has something's got to give. That has impact on our physical biology.
Wow.
And
why is why is doing nothing? Why is it getting more important then? Since we're so, the physical, we're seeing the consequences. So how can doing nothing help with that?
Well, about 10 years ago or 15 years ago, science has discovered actually what happens in our brains when we're doing nothing. And they observed that when people removed their focus from external circumstances or activities, something very critical happened. So we believe that when we focus on an activity, that's when our brain functions the best, and that's when all the neural pathways activate. But that is actually not true. When we look at the MRI images of what happens in your brain when you're simply closing your eyes, laying back, and just kind of letting your mind wander, not necessarily focusing on things, astonishing things happen. And I think you've tried it for yourself.
I did, yeah.
And you probably have felt the effects.
Yeah. So you can see in the brain that there's something changing, right?
Absolutely. There's empirical evidence. We have now factual evidence. We can no longer muse that this is some kind of a spiritual thing, or it's some kind of a fluffy notion. No, we have now empirical evidence. We have research showing that doing nothing actually activates more parts of our brains than focusing on any certain activity does.
Very interesting, very interesting. And what is doing nothing to you? Wow. Yeah, what is doing nothing? Because I meditate, I do a lot of mindful stuff, but what is doing nothing actually?
Yeah, right. You're bringing something very interesting or important to this topic up. Our culture is very big on control, right? So we not only are we trying to control our time or regulate our time, we are also attempting to regulate what we do with it. And at the same time, we're also attempting to regulate how we're doing nothing. And in this specific case is what you mentioned, mindfulness, meditation, yoga. These are just some of the activities that employers are trying to prescribe in order to compensate for the current disengagement crisis, the current burnout crisis on the work floor. So they say, well, people are burning out, what should we do? Let's introduce all these novel new activities. However, they're missing a key element, and they're going by outdated modalities of thinking. When so mindfulness and meditation are in effect, again, requiring that we focus on a certain thing. So if we're talking about yoga, we're focusing on an asana. If we're talking about meditation, we're focusing on our breath or focusing on reducing thinking. When we're talking about mindfulness, we're focusing on any certain activities and observing things. So again, that does not allow for that specific neural pathway to activate. So there is a system in our brains which activates. It's called the default mode network, which activates when we do nothing, when we close our eyes. That default mode network is what I described earlier, that scientists have discovered that when you close your eyes, it activates by default. And that's the only prerequisite. Basically not focusing on anything, not thinking about anything, not trying to stop your thoughts, but just allowing your mind to wander. It's okay to have thoughts.
So it means just sitting on a couch, closing eyes, and just let it happen. And whatever comes up, all the thoughts, all the new patterns, insights, that is just allow it.
Surrender, allow, couch on your head, on your floor, wherever you like. There is no specific rules to the game, right? You can just lay in bed, and you will notice that as soon as you're laying in bed, that's when your brain suddenly goes very active. Well, that's your neural pathways, our default mode network is starting to activate. And that's a wonderful process. However, we've been conditioned to believe that in fact is a rumination. So psychology has taught us, we should do anything to avoid that process. But that process is key and critical to so many things.
Yeah, I realize that because I try it, I do it now every week and just sit still and close my eyes. And it's, especially after a long day of work, so much going on, and I sit still and only for 30 minutes, so many things pop up in my mind, so many solutions with difficult questions that I have. It's amazing. It's so powerful, just doing nothing. And it's even more powerful for me than sometimes just meditate, because like you said, it's focusing on something.
Right.
And with doing nothing, it's amazing. It's so powerful.
It brings up those breakthroughs, because this is the modality to create new connections in your brain. When default mode network activates, so when you're in a rest position, or when you're resting and taking time to do nothing, this is when the default mode network activates. And what it does, that's when new connections are created. And this is what innovation is all about, right? Creativity, innovation, breakthroughs is about connecting one thing to another. And then, whoa, what do you know? You have an aha moment. But in addition to that, this is when learning happens. We think that learning happens while we're engaged in an activity, while we're reading a book, while we go to a workshop, while we're listening to a TED Talk. But that's not true. Apparently, it happens when we're allowing our mind to wander. It happens after the fact, not during the fact. And then add to that the fact that the default mode network is responsible for placing things or our experiences into a meaningful context. And this is where we develop meaning. This is where we find passion. This is where the purpose and passion are contained. It's not in the external information that we're looking for. It's all within us, and all we need to activate that is allow for time to do nothing.
Yeah, I love that. I love the term breakthrough and aha moments, and you tap into your intuition, right? And that's also and with meaning, and it's where passion comes from. So you cannot look your passion from the outside world; it's already inside.
Correct.
Right, and when you close your eyes, you can access to your inside, to your meaning, to your intuition, to your passion. I'm so interested. It's so cool how the scientific research behind doing nothing, and I experienced it myself. It's amazing. It's really, so I want to recommend it to you all. If you feel like you're very busy, stop doing it. Close your eyes and watch it happen. It's sometimes magic.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah. So what could be the next step for maybe people who are watching or they want to experience it a little bit more themselves? What can you recommend?
There are two things that I could mention specifically, and one is a Breakthrough Habits. That's a group on Facebook where it's a closed group where we together redefine, outdated standards by which we are used to live. It's an interesting community. We just started it a few weeks ago, but it's been growing tremendously. I'm very impressed at the speed of its growth because there is a big interest in this topic. People are very interested in this developments in this new science. And welcome to join that group, Breakthrough Habits, skip one H. And another thing is I've developed a initiative which is called Shift Happens, shifthappens.com. And this initiative is all about shifting our mentality and shifting the mindset that we used to have from the focus on being busy to doing more with less. And these are full day immersions where we provide you the pace, the place, the mentors, the tribe, the tools, everything you need to do as little as possible and achieve as much as you can.
I love it. I love it. So yeah, if you want to know more, Breakthrough on Facebook, or go to the shifthappens.com. And if you don't want to do anything, just close your eyes and let it happen.
Do nothing.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ina.
Thank you
and
so much.
I'll see you very soon.